Watching your child's face drop after you've snapped at them feels awful, doesn't it? What's worse is that at the same time that it's happening, even as the words are coming out of your mouth, you already know you're going to feel terrible about it. You can see that they're not being difficult, not really, certainly not on purpose. You can see they're excited or overwhelmed or struggling with something. And at the same time, when things have reached that snapping point and the words sort of fall out of your mouth with that tone you didn't mean, you find yourself standing there in the wreckage of a moment you saw coming and still couldn't stop. If you've ever been there, this video is for you, because your child's behavior and your reaction to it is not as straightforward as most of us think it is. This whole month, I've been circling around the same idea from 4 different angles. And what's become clearer for me is that our children are trying to be themselves while we're trying to hold together a lot of competing responsibilities. And sometimes those 2 things work together beautifully, and sometimes they don't. I want to tell you about a mum called Lizzie. Lizzie is not a real person and her children are fictional, but the struggles she has are very real for many of us. Lizzie's 9-year-old son, Evan, was heading off for the weekend with his dad, whitewater rafting. She had a list of equipment to gather and she was working her way through it methodically, finding things, stacking them ready for packing. The problem was Evan. Every time she found a piece of kit, he'd grab it. He grabbed the oars and started air paddling around the garden. That was funny. Then the life jacket went on and all padded up. He jumped over the sofa and chairs like it was an assault course. Less funny. But Lizzie understood he was 9 years old and completely lit up about the weekend, absolutely unable to contain his excitement. Then he picked up the inflatables pressure gauge and left it in the kitchen. She found the swimming shoes scattered up the stairs and his wetsuit in the flowerbed next to the drive. And it wasn't funny anymore. Lizzie pictured him on the river without essential kit. And as he reached over for the inflatable camp bed, folded neat and snug in its box, she snapped, "Evan, leave it alone now, will you?" Immediately, his face dropped, so visibly upset that he dropped it right away and snuck off to his bedroom. Later, when she'd found a few minutes to herself, Lizzie stood at the bathroom sink and cried. Not because of the equipment, not because of Evan, not really. She cried because she'd snapped at a child who was just excited, a child who was so happy about his weekend that he'd turned the entire garden into a river. And she knew that. She knew it even as she was doing it. For many mums, especially after they lose it with their child, there are 2 understandable conclusions they might come to. The first is, my child is being difficult. The second is, I am being a bad mum. And both of those conclusions put the fault somewhere. Either the child did something wrong or she did. But what if neither of those things is true? Let's think about what was happening for Evan. He was 9 years old and he had a whole weekend of whitewater rafting ahead of him. His excitement was completely real. It was also right now bigger than his ability to manage it sensibly. He wasn't grabbing the equipment to annoy Lizzie. He grabbed it because his excitement had completely outrun his own self-regulation. And that's not bad behavior. That's a 9-year-old. Now let's think about what was happening for Lizzie. She was carrying the logistics of the entire weekend alone. She had a list, a deadline, a complicated situation with his dad, and quietly underneath all of it, she'd been looking forward to some time to herself, a walk, a phone call with a friend, some breathing room, and none of that was happening. In this moment, she was stretched past her limits. She wasn't being a bad mum. She was carrying a lot of responsibilities and worries with a deadline, a list, and a knot in her stomach. And when 2 people who are both experiencing as much as they can manage cross paths, friction happens, especially if one of those people is a little person and doesn't have a wider perspective of the situation. Neither Lizzie nor Evan were doing anything wrong, and still they both affected each other for perfectly valid reasons. Now, if you've been watching my videos this month, you might start to see that this is the same theme we've been looking at all month. The child whose game gets interrupted too soon, the child whose outfit gets overridden, the child who clings at the nursery door, and now the child whose excitement gets too big for the available space. 4 different moments, and underneath every single one of them, the same tension. A child trying to be themselves and a mum trying to hold everything together. The 2 of them coming at the same moment from completely different directions. Now, one thing that makes this especially hard is that society has a very clear opinion about how a mum should respond in every one of these moments. Your child should be well behaved. You should be patient. You should not snap or sigh heavily or stand at the bathroom sink crying about it afterwards. And also, you should not suppress their excitement. You should not dismiss their feelings. You should not make them feel wrong for being themselves. So, be patient, but do not stifle them. Be firm, but do not crush who they are. Have a well-behaved child, but do not punish their natural impulses, both simultaneously every day. This sets up an impossible task for every mum that feels like it's personal, but it's actually a set of conflicting expectations that have just been woven into the way we think about what a good mother looks like. And the guilt that Lizzie felt at the bathroom sink was not because she'd done something terrible. It just shows how she was caught in an impossible situation, and she cares very much about getting it right. Now, I'm not here to solve society, but more to support mums as we try to make our way through these impossible standards. And I think the answer might be compassion, both for you and for your children, because it relieves us of those impossible standards while we keep on parenting anyway. Let's think about it this way. Do you remember what it felt like to be really excited about something when you were small? Not adult excitement where you can contain it and talk about it calmly, but the physical can't sit still kind of excited, the way Evan was. Did you ever feel like it was inconvenient to people around you? Or did anyone ever find it funny, even the 4th time? Or was there a moment where that excitement got too big and it was clear it was too much? I'm not asking this to point a finger at anyone, because nobody told your mum all of this either. She was dealing with the same impossible contradictions, the same pressure to have a well-behaved child and not suppress your natural impulses both at the same time. She had the same guilt when she snapped, the same resolve to do better tomorrow. But imagine if she came to you later and said, "Sorry, I snapped. I know you were all excited. Do you want to cuddle?" What would that have been like? So here we have 2 things. It's not your fault you were handed an impossible job description, and you can still keep trying to understand what's going on for your child. And it's between those 2 things that a different question becomes possible. Not so much, how do I get this right? But more, well, given who I am and who my child is and the reality of today, what can I actually do? For me, that's where parenting begins to feel less like unpaid labor and more like a relationship. Just 2 human beings doing their best to become themselves while staying connected to one another. If any of this feels familiar, if you've ever reacted and then later thought that wasn't actually fair, but can't put your finger on exactly why, that's what the 20-minute child decode is for. It's a 20-minute exercise that gives you a clear and compassionate picture of what your child can realistically manage right now. So you're not fighting development. So you're not taking normal childhood personally. So you can see what's actually happening and respond from that, rather than from the flash of frustration that comes from juggling what's impossible. The link is in the description below.